A doctor once asked me a question to highlight an overriding principle. When you are the top of your medical school class, you are called valedictorian. What do you call someone who graduates at the bottom of their class? Doctor. I believe that this is the paradigm we must view Francis through. I would argue it's not just me making this point. Francis is very consistent in his messaging on this fact.
I want to announce you that I'm officially partnering up with the PFL.
How do you feel at this moment, now that the saga of your free agency is over?
Let's correct that. I'm a MMA free, mixed martial art free agent. I'm no longer a mixed martial art free agent.
I want to start the video with this as a means of contextualizing everything I say from here on. I think it is short-sighted to view Francis's deal as a simple contract to fight. Rather, it's more of a blueprint for his future. I have been asked over and over what I think of the monetary aspects of his deal. My answer? It doesn't matter. In my opinion, signing a deal with another promotion for a monetary value equal or greater than that of what the UFC offered is an accomplishment in and of itself. I think one of the misconceptions of the message I was trying to get across in my video detailing the 2-year saga with the UFC is the following. Most view it through the lens of Francis as an athlete. I view Francis more as a pioneer in combat sports. In my opinion, Francis's fighting legacy ended when he defeated Ciryl Gane, a fighter that was embarrassed in his first title shot by getting out-wrestled, knocks out that opponent after stuffing his takedowns. Then in his first defense, he faces the protege of his former coach who has an intensely adversarial relationship with him, proceeds to lose the first 2 rounds after being outstruck at distance, then completely flips the game plan and out-wrestled Ciryl over the next 3 rounds to a decision victory. My storytelling mind sees that as the close of his career as a fighter. That doesn't mean I don't think he will fight again, but in the end, I feel as though his legacy as an MMA fighter is already secured. So, when I go forward analyzing the contract and Francis's future, you need to understand that this is the vantage point I am approaching it from. I'm going to discuss the specifics of what we know in a numbered list from least important to most important. Let's start quickly with the least important aspect. Francis was signed to the superfight division, not the heavyweight division. Many seem to not understand that, but as you see on screen, the chyron clearly states superfight division. Next up, let's talk about the specifics, or rather the non-specifics, of his per-fight pay. As the excellent reporting from John S. Nash says on screen, Francis is making in the high 7 figures. This implies that Francis got the same monetary deal offered to him by the UFC. Again, this is not important, as I talked about in my Francis Legacy video, because a barrier to entry for any negotiation with him is the ability to match the monetary figure the UFC offered him. Next up, let's hear from Francis on the perk he got for any future opponents.
Wow. I'm not sure whether that's motivating or terrifying for the heavyweights in the division. I'll have to let them answer that question. So you mentioned.
I think that's also motivating, because what is also interesting about this deal is that PFL they openly agreed to offer a minimum of purse to my opponent of $2 million.
This is important for more reasons than you think. Not only is it a great goodwill gesture on Francis's part, it is also a fantastic negotiating tactic. There is a concept in politics called a wedge issue. This refers to an issue that a politician has publicly shown support for that also polls incredibly low with their political base. Opponents will use this wedge issue to drive a wedge between the politician and the voters. Francis has given the silver bullet to every light heavyweight and heavyweight fighter in any MMA promotion on earth. All of them will want to either renegotiate their contract higher or test free agency at the expiration of their deal in order to get a chance at the Ngannou $2 million prize. Here's an example of why that's important. Think of every fighter that calls out Jake Paul as they are beginning to age and want the Jake Paul payday. Off the top of my head, I remember Nate, Tyron, Ben Askren, Paulo Costa, Jeremy Stevens, Luke Rockhold, and Mike Perry. Now Jake has or will be fighting a fraction of those names, but each of them are lobbying for the fight to cash in on the payday. That's free advertising for Jake, right? Analogously, think of the allure of a $2 million payday to get knocked into another dimension by Francis Ngannou. If every UFC heavyweight isn't doing everything they can to test free agency, they are incompetent. Excellently crafted wedge issue by them. The second to last major piece I had mentioned comes in the form of an exclusive MMA deal, so that Francis is free to promote himself as a boxer however he would like.
This deal is exclusive MMA, not combat sport, because since PFL doesn't do boxing, shouldn't be including boxing in it, and that's what we agree on. So I can do boxing separately whenever I want, if ever I want, and they are even going to support me, step out of my way, and even support me to do my boxing, as that's one of my biggest dreams, to do boxing matches.
Now here is where I would like to insert the MMAI strategic plan for Francis. Controversial take, I think Francis should take one boxing fight and then one MMA fight that will serve as his retirement fight from combat sports. Let me explain why while continuing this numbered list. One of the most successful aspects of Francis's free agency was the silence he maintained. It heightened the impact of the release when he finally told us what he was doing. Let's apply this logic out and leverage it to the nth degree. I say he should take one boxing fight, and I know exactly who it should be and where. Francis needs to do everything in his power to sign a bout agreement to box Anthony Joshua in either Nigeria or Cameroon. Anthony Joshua, or AJ, is originally from Nigeria, so I expect that since he is the A side, he would want it to be there. Now Ngannou has already personally reached out to AJ's promoter, Eddie Hearn.
I want to pitch to you. Anthony Joshua has been rumoured of this Saudi Arabia fight with Deontay Wilder in December, right? And you're going to want to fight in the interim, should that fight take place, you want to keep him busy. Would the logical fight therefore not be to pick someone who is interesting, unique, and will make you lots of money, and that should surely be Francis Ngannou? The Dillian White fights there, like the rematch, they had the beef, but there's a risk with Dillian White. Surely for Joshua and for you, you can beat Francis, right?
Yeah, I think the Francis Ngannou fight happens in the Middle East. You know, it's a kind of, not freak show, because Francis can box as well, but the big money comes there from the Middle East, and in August, it's not really the time to do it.
Just because of the weather?
Yeah, mainly. And I spoke to AJ about the fight, and he likes it and he gets it, but he's very focused on his boxing career at the moment, and he doesn't want to derail that to do something a little bit gimmicky, even though it's dangerous, you know. But he wants to prepare for Deontay Wilder, and I think he doesn't feel that Ngannou would prepare him for Deontay Wilder. But
ironically, considering both of them are like the big swinging dudes.
Yeah, maybe. But I had 2 hours of Francis Ngannou in a meeting in Vegas. One of the most fascinating meetings I've ever had. I mean, his story is unbelievable. I found myself just asking him question after question about his life and how he ended up where he did, and you know, and
a struggle you can relate to from your your upbringing.
Not at all. But that's the thing I found fascinating. I don't think anyone can relate to what he went
of course.
through. I mean, it was unbelievable, and you know, he's a very tough man and a huge man, and he will be in a big fight, I'm sure.
Hearn throws cold water on it, but I know the exact pitch Francis needs. I believe that Francis should do everything in his power to meet with Anthony one-on-one and pitch to him a vision of the most successful heavyweight sons of Africa, one boxing and one MMA, coming together for a show meant to inspire the African people, as is obviously so important to Francis. Now, of course, money will be the primary reason not to do it. If only a world-renowned boxer, promoted by Eddie Hearn, had set a precedent weeks ago for taking less money in order to do a show in his home country due to his national pride over his financial well-being.
So, look, Canelo himself said this week, Eddie Hearn told me how hard it would be to make this fight. I kept pushing him to make it. He made it. Now I see how hard it was to make this fight. So the storyline in terms of Canelo coming back here, Lucas, he's turning down insane money. There was an offer from Saudi Arabia, according to Eddie Hearn. There was a big one in London, and then there were plans for Las Vegas for this fight. Canelo wanted it in Guadalajara, so he's willing to take that pay cut.
Now, I completely recognize that this is a massive long shot, but Canelo has proven that it is feasible for Eddie to make this work. If Francis can inspire AJ to forego monetary gratification for eternal legacy, I believe this could be huge for the entire ecosystem of combat sports in Africa. And at this hypothetical event, right before the main event, they announced PFL Cameroon, the first event of the newly created PFL Africa subsidiary brand. PFL Africa is the most important piece of the contract to Francis's legacy, in my opinion, and to Francis personally.
The reason why I signed with the PFL is because of they are willing to develop the sport. Most importantly, in Africa, I stand for my people, for my community, I fight for them, and to get something like this to bring back home is like a huge accomplishment.
Let's hear Francis talk about the new subsidiary brand.
Besides all that, we have a massive plan to develop the sport in Africa. With this partnership, we are launching a PFL Africa, which is going to be a whole promotion based in Africa for African to help develop fighter in Africa, to help for build infrastructure, to help bring coaches in Africa, to give those African fighters the same opportunity, the same resource as people here. They have talent, you know. The problem now is the resource, the infrastructure, and that's something that PFL really cares about it.
So, here is my pitch for a hypothetical PFL Cameroon 1. To accomplish it, I worked on this video with the best mind in MMA prospect scouting, Sean Bitter of MMA Wizard, to scout 10 sub-Saharan African fighters that are signable or signed by the PFL right now to fill out a full MMA card headlined by Francis in the main event, and new PFL signee Cedric Doumbé in the co-main. With these names, PFL can create a full card representing the best up-and-coming African talent in the world. Here are a few names that Sean scouted on screen. In the description, I have a link to Sean's Patreon with the full list available free to all who are interested. To me, this is how Francis will secure his legacy. Irrespective of the AJ fight's chances, I believe in the end that Francis should headline a single card more, and it should be completely focused on highlighting the future of African MMA talent in the country that Francis came from. A man born into poverty, sacrifices everything for his dream, and with his retirement fight, gives back more than what he was given. Thank you for watching. I released a companion podcast to this video over on our Patreon for $5 and up patrons. I link to it below in the description. Let me know what you think of my ideas in the comments below.
What's squishy, stretchy, and transforms almost anything? Foam is fun you can feel. Roll it, mold it, or cover it. That's the way you foam it. Look.